Everybody needs a dolphin sound to start out the morning with. It is the Way Forward broadcast, and we've been advertising and telling you guys that we were coming back to you. Second season. We got a new opening intro, and Jason is here with me. My name is Erskine. I am the co-host. I have host here. Jason, you need to get host on yours as well. We're host and co-host of the Way Forward show, music artist here in Nashville, Tennessee, where it is currently cloudy and overcast. What's the weather like there in Illinois?
It's beautiful compared to what we've had. The last week was like sub-zero temperatures and 3 feet of snow. This week is 50s and clear, and I don't know. It's very bipolar. Very bipolar. Yeah. We're trying to warm up. It got so cold that it got to your bones. Like you couldn't get warm. So just actually, for the first time in my life, I think I actually felt like what you feel like all the time up here. So
yes,
I get it now.
I'm trying to explain that to people.
I get it now. I just
can't get in a comfortable position. I can't get enough clothes on. I can't. I'm chilled to my core.
It was that kind of cold. And then I got a wife who does not believe in turning up the thermostat above 67.
Uh-oh. That thermostat rivalry going on out there.
We had to put on sweatpants and blankets. And I told her after 2 layers of clothes and 2 blankets, I still couldn't get cold, that I'm going to enforce the man rule, whatever rule is. I pay the bills, we pay the bills. I don't know what it is. Just that
your audience is going to get you now.
Yeah, I had to do something. I'm usually pretty cooperative, but when I get chilled, I'm like to the bone. I got Wisconsin blood in me.
Yeah,
we go outside in 40-degree weather with shorts and a shirt, and can't do it.
Y'all can have that. I just want to welcome everybody to the show. This is the Way Forward broadcast. Of those of you who've been checking out Erskine Music Show every day, you guys know that we've been going Monday through Friday. We've been going hard. I was about to stop that show, and then people were just like, no, you probably shouldn't stop the show. I kind of like the show. And so we're going to do a Wednesday and Thursday edition of the show. I don't know if you know that, Jason. We're going to keep rolling with the Erskine Music Show. Right. We're going to do a Wednesday and Thursday because, my brother got to do some other things up in the day, like music artistry, like planning a church, like all those kind of, necessary and important things. And so we're going to be rolling on the weekends with this show. It's probably going to be a Friday or a Saturday. Yeah. So just kind of give us a little bit of flexibility. We've got a world tour scheduled for this year, and we're going to be interviewing some guests on this show. So this show is more about culture, race, reconciliation, the church, moving forward. So those are all hot topics that we're going to be dealing with, and just kind of how our culture views those things. We started with some discussions last year after the shooting of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and a lot of cultural discussions that were going on. There were black, white kind of things that were going on. We have been friends for years, and so we've had those kind of conversations many, many times before. But it was just good to be able to put that out in a public format. And then there were so many people that responded positively to what we were doing that we just extended that. Now another season, and then obviously there's more and more stuff that's going on. Both Jason and I are ardent followers and passionate followers of Jesus Christ. I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you're ready to preach the message right now. You're already dressed up in your suit and everything. Let me go change and put something on that's more dignifying, Reverend.
I took a cue from you. Usually it's switched. Usually you got all the style, and I'm not even saying this is style. This is just I finally said maybe I should put a button-up shirt on and a jacket. And my church loves it when I dress like they're like, "Hey, you look good for an old bald guy." I'm like, "Yeah, thank you."
Well, usually when I get dressed up like that, it means that I'm running around last minute. I'm still in my pajamas, and I'm thinking I'm about to be live on the air in about 2 minutes, so I don't have time to actually get ready. So let me just grab a sport coat or something like that and just put it on real quick. And
I got khakis on and everything, so I went ahead and
well. I actually don't have pajamas on. Well, maybe since I'm a music artist here in Nashville, I should probably go with the music artist look, whatever that is.
That whole hipster thing that we talk about all the time.
Well, I'm either a music artist or a Fortune 500 person. You don't know. Us millionaires have a tendency to try to dress down.
That's right. You don't want to show off the cash.
Yeah, we don't want to flaunt things in people's face.
Good for you.
And so this is the Way Forward broadcast. You got it streaming down there. The comment section is turned on for you guys that are viewing. We're going to jump into some pretty hot topics here today. I want to start with talking about Tiger Woods. I don't know if you've been following any of that story, but I followed it pretty good, and I had what I believe is a Christian response to that situation. I wanted to kind of see what your reaction was to that, and then we'll jump into some of the Illinois legislation and talk about, because the article that you sent me from the Wire Post was in anticipation of a ruling yesterday, and so you can tell me the latest news on that. And we're going to talk a little bit about education and kind of how identity politics and the, liberal versus progressive agenda impacts education and what the church's response should be to those kind of things. And so, Tiger Woods, what'd you get on that story?
My son first broke the news to me. I was kind of in I want to say a media fast, but I tried not to get on there too much because I can get on there for a while and start looking at things and get my headspace. Mm-hmm. But he told me, he's like, "Hey, Dad, Tiger Woods was in a car accident." I said, "He'll be all right." He had to be pulled out by the jaws of life or something. I said, "He's good. He'll be all right. Is he alive? He's good." And then I started reading just how bad the accident was, and I started to feel bad because it sounds like he crushed his femur or some of his feet, and he's going to have the major reconstruction surgery. And for anybody in that position, like Tiger Woods, for anybody there who depends on his legs the way he does, this is a life-changing accident.
Yes.
This is a career-changing. He's already had some struggles. Man, what is killing us?
I'm trying to get Tiger Woods up on the ticker. So, yeah, we're talking about Tiger Woods really quickly here, and just the response and the reaction to what's going on there. Jason needs to pay his internet bills. He knows I'm going to get him because my stuff is smooth except when I start pressing weird buttons.
Yeah.
Hey, that's you, bro.
Man.
My joint is smooth today.
Anyways, I'll get to Lisa about paying the bill. But no, I started to feel bad for him because I thought, man, this has a crazy way of crashing your identity when you depend on something so much. And I felt like he's already had the back issues. This is now this might actually do it. I mean, this might end his career entirely. And that's unsettling for him, I would imagine. So
yeah, I took this up for the last 2 days. As somebody who loves sports, and you and I jump into some sports analysis, we like to get on LeBron James and that whole greatest of all time discussion that we start with here. Just a little lively, light conversation for you guys that just kind of keep up with us. But I jumped on this yesterday, really talking about the aspect of Buddhism and kind of the interplay there. As a Christian, my response to this is I pray for his health and his recovery, and I pray for his soul. And I'm saying, as a Christian, you really can't pray and not pray both of those things. The compassionate and obvious response would be to pray for his recovery. He's been someone who's been an icon. He's been a trendsetter, this being Black History Month and this being a racial reconciliation show. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the impact of Tiger Woods on the sport of golf and also in the area of race relationships and breaking down some stereotypes and barriers here in our society. But also, as Christians, we would be remiss if we didn't pray for his soul. As an avowed Buddhist, we have seen him claim that identity and talk about the fact that he practices that as a form of meditation, understanding that world philosophy and that world religion denotes a certain instance of karma that is enacted into the universe as a result of things either you have done or things that you have emitted into the universe. And so I can imagine for Tiger Woods, if he's a practicing Buddhist, having a situation like he's faced might cause him to think that this is a result of his karma. Whereas as Christians, we have a totally different response as to why bad things happen to bad people in this world.
I'm really curious to see how he takes that, because most Buddhists I've interacted with who've kind of taken that identity on, forget the karma aspect of it in the negative light. It's kind of it's kind of like Christians who like God is only love, and there's no judgment, there's nothing like that. I found that the Richard Gere's of the world and the Tiger Woods of the world really like Buddhism when I can meditate and empty my mind. But when you start talking about
the master of your success,
but when you start talking about karma, like come on, we're all not perfect people. So I mean, it'd be really interesting to see if he actually comes out and says, "Man, I need to repent of something." Obviously, of course, he wouldn't use that language even. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I was going to say we're inventing Christian language, putting into his mouth, but
we're putting that kind of language in there. But I think that's spot on. I was never much of a golfer. I took up golf in college because my brother played golf. And the one way I could connect with my brother, there's a 4-year difference between us, was we could play golf together. And I could maybe one day beat him in golf and get a little pleasure of that. Tiger Woods was coming around to his prime, when I was in high school. And I remember just watching him play and never being enthralled with golf at all, but watching him play did excite me about golf. Like how far he drove the ball, how accurate he was with the ball, his presence on the course, how young he was, and how he handled pressure. I actually started to believe that golfers were athletes for a minute. And
did they digress since then? The devolution of the professional golfer.
Yeah. So he had an impact on me early as I began to take up and think about golf. Tiger Woods was I would say the one golfer I knew and I watched, and actually when his whole life kind of unraveled, I actually felt disappointed in some ways. When his family broke up, and then I felt bad. He was back. I don't follow athletes like that very often, but he was somebody who I was like, wow, and I really respect this guy and think he's a great professional. And I knew he dealt with some stuff. I mean, golf has been dominantly white. And him being on that golf course sent a power message. It's like hockey, right? Hockey's another sport that's been dominantly white. And when you see an athlete out there who's African-American playing hockey, it just sends a powerful message. And I always Tiger Woods handled that very, very well, because he heard some junk. He heard some junk early in his career, and he just outplayed everybody. So I've got fond memories of watching him play, and watching him handle himself. So I do hope he recovers. I don't know. When he really started to tag the Buddhism thing after some of his issues with his family, and I thought, man, that just is not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
Self-help does not help.
Yeah, it's just not gonna work. And so I pray that God would open his heart and see things differently. I pray that Christ would become real to him, and the Word of God would become the truth, the real truth. That he wasn't empty his mind, but he actually fill it with what he was created for. And
the knowledge of Christ.
Yeah, and that he'll come out of this, even if he never plays golf again, he has assured identity in Christ.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I said. I don't want to be a false prophet on here and say, hey, he's never coming back to golf. His career's over. We just watched the end of Tiger Woods, and then he comes back next year. Because we're certainly praying for his recovery, but at the same time, was this a bad thing that happened in Tiger Woods? Well, obviously, karma would suggest that it was an extremely bad thing that would happen. But if this is something that leads him on a path toward finding Christ, then this was ultimately a good thing. And that Romans 8:28, God works all things together for good to them that love God and the called according to his purpose, is the good outcome of everything that's happened. And so, just like a Christian worldview for those of you who are out there. Maybe it's, you're coming across this channel and you're saying, there's two guys here who are in, this Christianity thing, and I thought all world religions were basically the same. I mean, you're all just teaching the same thing. I wanted to use this as an example of just saying there's just a clear chasm between Buddhism and Christianity, Hinduism, and every other religion in the world, and Christianity. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep, clear distinctions and clear repercussions. there's grace
Absolutely.
available for Tiger, and I pray that he receives it. So and I pray not only does he his health back and his soul right. I'd love to just flourish in his family, and just flourish as a human being. So tough
Amen.
out, man.
All right, we just ran out of time. Now, time to go to conservative versus progressive talk, all rallying around the subject of education in the state of Illinois and other places. It's not just stop in Illinois, but you guys are right there in the heart of what's going on there. Let us know a little bit about what's going on here. I'm going to read some stuff from the Chicago Tribune and then maybe state both the cases as I've sort of read about it this week, and then you can fill us in with the latest up-to-date information.
Yeah. So what we're seeing in Illinois, which is what's being seen in California and I believe in New York as well, is you have these lobbying or these outside entities. So the proposed standards that we're going to talk about, they were not created by the Illinois lawmakers. They were not. This was not brought up by the state government. This has been brought up by the state's diverse and learner-ready teacher network. So this is an outside entity who's bringing this to the state to adopt. And what it's called is the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards. And what it pretty much is it's encouraging teachers, not only encouraging, it's demanding that teachers teach a progressive viewpoint and perspective inside the classroom. And what we mean by progressive, it's all the stuff we're seeing in our culture. So it's a lot of critical race theory stuff that's being put in there, and it's essentially politicizing education. Like the teachers have to. I think one of the things is create a risk-taking space that promotes student advocacy. And the content that's created, it has to be a counter narrative to dominant culture, which is another language for saying it's got to go against current majority culture, if you want to say it that. It's going to require that teachers adhere to these policies, or else they're going to get their license revoked. So, for instance, with the idea of like white, well, we were talking about white fragility and white stuff, white majority culture. Teachers are going to have to embrace this idea that white teachers are culturally responsible for racism, and they're going to have to be less. I don't know how to say it. Like they're going to have to try to put a curb on their whiteness. I can't quite get the language out, but essentially that's what's going on. And so you have a lot of progressive ideology being pushed through, and it was passed by the board 6-5. And I didn't look at the news today, but I know it's got a 40-day public hearing that needs to happen before this goes to the House and to the state Senate. So that's what we're seeing is new teaching standards that require these teachers to pretty much teach and implement progressive liberalism ideology. And if you don't, you'll get your license revoked. That's the teeth they're putting on it. So this isn't just talk; they're actually putting consequences to if you don't abide by this. And this is not just public school teachers. Eventually, any teacher who has a public certification that even works in a private school can have your license revoked if you don't hold on to these standards. If you don't teach these standards, K through 12.
Yeah.
So
sorry about that camera thing, man. People keep calling me this morning. They're obviously not watching the show. I have to put the memo out. Hey, there's a lot going on, obviously, here. But,
yeah.
All good. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear from your vantage point how that affects you, because, you read this on a national level and it's like, okay, this seems far removed, but it's really not any different than some of the language that I've been hearing about from some of the educators here and administrators in the Nashville metro.
You're seeing it. You're seeing it all over. I mean, you're seeing it in New York. School districts are doing some different things that are really upholding. You're getting rid of critical thinking and replacing it with critical theory thinking, to be able to push this massive political ideology in the classroom. I think is going to have some constitutional issues, because whether you are conservative or liberal, the politics of the day shouldn't dominate the classroom. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and a philosophy of education should dominate the classroom. But this standard that they're putting in place is not about education, as it is about an ideology that they're wanting to, and it's a very aggressive, activist-minded ideology.
Hey, I'm pretty much in lockstep agreement with you. I did want to ask some questions and maybe make this a little bit more of a discussion where we have critical thinking, and we just kind of push this out here for people, and just let them kind of see. So when I'm asking some of these questions and presenting some of this information, it's not because I'm against you, but I want to kind of hear you out. I want to kind of tease you out on a couple of thoughts here.
Yeah.
And these are kind of in my show notes. And so I got this from the Chicago Tribune. This is, I don't know if you remember Scott Bourne, but he's tuned in and he's obviously invested, former mayor of the city of Ferris, very active in the political scene there. He's been to Washington several times on behalf of farmers, avid supporter of Jake Ellsey and doing some work there at the Capitol. And so very much invested in these issues and things that you might hear in the state of Texas, that also would kind of dovetail with what you're talking about Illinois. And, as I'm working on the Nashville Justice Council here, Justice Circle, excuse me, one of the areas and pillars that we are concerned about is education in Nashville. And so we've been in a discussion with some of the administrators of the Nashville Public School, and the language is very similar in some of the things that we are adopting and some things that we are attempting to do to promote various outcomes for the students in the metro area. Here's what the Chicago Tribune has written, and this comes from a recent article that they have posted. Per the standards of future educators, should, as one education understands, be a system in their society, but not limited to the school system, to create and reinforce inequities, thereby creating oppressive conditions. Educators work actively against these systems in their everyday roles in education and institutions. And so from a certain vantage point, the progressive side, there is the push that says we need these type of educational philosophies to dominate our day, because we've been oppressed, we've been repressed for many years with a predominant and prevalent educational philosophy that has been oppressive to many of the students. So going against that, the counter argument, some information that Jason sent me this week from Ted Dabrowski and John Klingler. Klingler, is that how you say their names? From the Wire Points. And I don't know if you got that last comment there, but I was just reading stating the progressive side as it's been instituted and written about in the Chicago Tribune. But also we've got John Klingner and David Dabrowski. I don't know if you've heard of those. Well, obviously you've heard of those guys because you sent me the article. But the cultural responsive teaching, replacing, and I think you even said this a little bit earlier in your monologue, replacing critical thinking with critical race thinking. Yeah. And so that's kind of the two sides of this. The progressives who are saying, hey, we've been repressed for many years because of the educational philosophy that only takes into account one side, very Eurocentric kind of education, and then trying to combat that and circumvent that maybe with a new type of philosophy, whereas we're detracting away from some of the critical thinking skills. And I was just reading down through some of the articles and some of the dissenting voices that were basically saying, if we are seeing a massive problem in the area of literacy, those should be the areas that we address first in education instead of adopting new agendas. So that's kind of where the two sides of this are kind of doing a tug of war.
So here's where I feel like, in many respects, I don't know if I'm using apples and oranges is the right analogy, but you have, of course, your political philosophy. But in my experience in education, what needs to dominate the school system, education system, is a philosophy of education. It's not politics play a part in education to get funding and to move things around. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's just part of what you have to deal with inside of it. But what should dominate inside the classroom, inside the school system, is a proper understanding of how are kids educated, how do they best learn, what is their learning philosophy, what's the learning cycle, how do we engage this and deal with this. What I'm seeing happening on the progressive side is less of a philosophy of education and more of a philosophy of politics and advocacy. They're not addressing literacy. They're not addressing that 2/3 of Illinois kids cannot read, write, or do math, not at grade level. Mm-hmm. And so when you're pushing out more of a political agenda that's focusing on rights and advocacy, but you don't have a plan to deal with the literacy rate. Reading is everything. If you can't get this child to read by the time they're in 3rd grade, the chances of them actually finishing high school drop substantially. And so what I'm seeing with this critical race theory, or critical theory in general, is that what we're trying to advocate for is more of an advocacy activist type of child versus a learned child. And I don't care what side of the aisle you fall on, this is going to be catastrophic. I don't care if you are right-winged and you want to have right-wing philosophies is there. If that is your primary concern, you're losing the child and the ability to teach this child, because you're more focused on this political identity than you are focused on the actual success of the child in the classroom. That's my take on it.
So there's a couple of things that I wanted to pick up on, and I wanted to bring that back to you because I want to come full circle in this discussion today. And I'm going to have a discussion with Jason. It's going to be quite a monologue on my part because, his internet's coming in and out, and people keep calling me. Don't call me during this time. My phone's still turned on because of some things that I need to get information on during the show, but don't call me anymore. All right. But essentially, I wanted to bring your comments full circle in this discussion, but I wanted to put that, what should the philosophy of education be, sort of at the end of our discussion when we say, okay, well, what is the way forward? But I wanted to ask you some questions about that, because are we being, and I don't want to use the F word in this discussion here because I've already gotten flagged several times for saying bad words, but are we being fair when we talk about critical race theory being a replacement, or can the two of those things coexist side by side? Critical thinking leading to an understanding of some of the lack of ways that critical thinking has been applied across a variety of methods and teaching. Like, are we coming up with, and the word that I think often is the bridge word between those things, and at least one that we've been using in Nashville, that I've heard used in Nashville, is the word innovative learning. Are we just saying that education and philosophy of education can only happen one way in a philosophy of education, or can there be other innovative methods that are introduced so that we begin to understand how critical race theory impacts? Because I want to ask you a question. Is one of the main issues, because I was looking at the Illinois State Board of Education, is that one of the main issues that people are having there centered around the fact that the Board of Education is basically the one that decided this issue and not actually a discussion with the people? How is that factoring into what's going on?
That's a huge problem. Yeah, it's a small group of people who are not taking into account the whole state of Illinois. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest problems we have in Illinois is that Cook County and Sangamon County run the entire state. So that's Chicago and Springfield pretty much, right?
Hey, really quickly, before you jump into that discussion, and we need to hear about how that impacts the balance of power in Illinois. Really quickly, can you give some of your credentials in education? Because you and I both have spent time in the public school system and in public education. And so we're not just talking at this and just throwing stones from afar and just saying, hey, in an ideal world, this is what it would look like, but we having no experience whatsoever. What is your experience in the public school? And I'll share a little bit about mine.
Yeah, so I started off in the public school in college, working with at-risk kids, tutoring, mentoring. I opened a program for at-risk kids through AmeriCorps, to which I was using educational philosophies to help tie in mentoring and tutoring to kids who are failing academically. I eventually got into teaching. I taught several years in Texas and coached football. I also taught at private school in Louisville. I'd say that most of my adult career so far, except for the last 5 years, has been in education, either in the classroom or working with the tutoring, mentoring at-risk kids. And even now in my ministry, we've started a mentoring program at the church where we take on children who are at risk, and we do mentoring and tutoring with them. So I'm constantly been tied to education, I would say, for the last 20 years in some form or another.
Yeah.
And I'm currently getting my doctorate of ministry education at Southern.
Right. So this is a brother who has invested years, decades of his life in education, public education, educational theory, and now, as you had just mentioned, going on and doing doctoral work in that area. And for myself, I've spent over a decade at least in public education from the standpoint of working in the Ferris Independent School District, first as a paraprofessional substitute teacher, and then working with special needs, behavior intervention, and then sort of being a district liaison between myself and other districts, traveling around and working with some of the special needs students that were there. And so having a lot of insight, especially in a small town, you get to know who the administrators are, the superintendent, the board of education.
Yeah.
You get to know them pretty well in a small town, and having that kind of level of experience, both you and I, to some extent, have repudiated that because we, with our own families, I guess we should mention, we homeschool our kids and have found some alternative ways of doing education. And we'll get back to that in just a second. But talk to me about this lack of representation that's going on in Illinois.
That's been a big problem here because a small group of people essentially make massive decisions for the whole state. If you look at Illinois, even the last election, I think all counties but 10 voted red or conservatively. Okay, so the dominant thought in Illinois is a little more moderate to conservative minded, though the state has been Democrat for a long time, but it's been old Democrat, more conservative values with more liberal government leaning type stuff. That's all flipped and switched. They've gone more conservative, but a representation doesn't happen that way. The state and the Senate and the Congress are all run by very progressive liberal Democrats. The state board of education is run by progressive liberal Democrats. So when you have representation as far as whether it's education or political views or even economic views, whatever they are, it's heavily dominated by one side. And so a lot of the folks in Illinois, at least in the area I'm in, don't feel like they are represented. And they've done a good example of this, and we can talk about this another time later, is they just rammed through kind of a defund police legislation through Congress that has now going to affect all the police departments in the state of Illinois. And I just had a meeting this morning with somebody who's feeling the fallout from that, who's a police chief in a town. So all these decisions are being made by this small group of people who are affecting a lot of people that don't necessarily buy into or agree. So now you have teachers inside of these schools who aren't necessarily politically affiliated with this perspective or this viewpoint, and are going to be forced to teach this political viewpoint. And if you don't, then you could possibly lose your job and your livelihood.
Now, hey, can we vamp on that for just a little bit? I'm a musician, so like vamping.
Yeah,
and you're a little musician as well. So I mean, you're worldwide. You're prolific over there in Illinois. But let's vamp on this for just a second, because I have often found that there's a discontinuity between like boards of education, school boards, administrators, and the actual teachers who are in the classroom.
Yeah, that's true.
It's always been a subject that has been a curiosity to me, because every teacher that I have met, and I say this with sincerity, has been concerned about the students in the classroom.
Yeah.
These issues are not their primary concern, because their concerns, this is why they're great teachers, is because they're concerned about helping that child to develop in the way that is most appropriate, without the politics and without interference. Left to their own devices, they are there primarily and solely to help those students. Now, like you were saying earlier, you can't escape the notion that there's going to be some politics as it relates to funding, as it relates to special programs, services in the school system. And that's going to affect their lives and affect the way that they teach, affect the curriculum that they adopt. Can we ask the question, do we, across the board, whether progressive or conservative, do we want an equitable educational environment? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't want.
Like I say, I would have answered the question for you.
we don't want inequalities in the classroom, right? That's caused problems, right? We're dealing with some of this right now, which is why, okay, in my short interaction with critical theory, that's why I don't think that's a good starting point, because I'm not sure critical theory actually unites people in the classroom. I think it exposes some issues that we need to address by all means. You would have to be completely in a cabin, in a mountain, in a hole somewhere if you can't recognize that we have some major issues to work through and deal with.
Well, can you just say that one more time, just so, because when people talk trash about this show,
yeah,
I want people to have heard you say that, because I will be your number one defender when people come on this show, and I know it's vice versa, and they say, well, Jason believes, and I'm like, well, no, this is not what Jason believes, because Jason said that there are some inequities historically that have happened, that is a place of redress. Okay, just that part right there.
Absolutely, they need to be addressed. I just don't know if you don't have enough friends from different cultures, different places, if you are not able to see it. So I don't want to make that a broad statement or an attack against somebody, but I just think spend a little time with people who are not like you, and you start to realize the world is a lot different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can step back out of myself for a moment and begin to see the eyes through Erskine, see the eyes through Justin, see the world through the eyes of different folks, I begin to see that, man, there are some crazy things. My issue is I'm not convinced yet that critical theory, critical race theory, intersectionality, all that stuff are the right ways to go about addressing it. I don't think they create the unity necessary. And when you start putting that in the classroom, though I can recognize that critical theory can begin the questioning process and begin to say, hey, let's pick apart something and let's turn it upside down for a minute to see what's going on. That part I can kind of appreciate, because it is being critical. The other parts of it, though, are so overwhelmingly away from what I think actually unites people, that to put it inside the classroom, I think is going to create more problems. And I think,
go ahead. I was going to say, so how do we get at that? I mean, what is the most equitable and educational solution? Because what I'm hearing, it seems like it's either this or it's either that.
Yeah, right.
Is there a way that we can do both of those things and accomplish the goal of giving the students the most resources possible?
I mean, you want to be honest, I think teachers need to have the understanding that people are created in God's image. Right? All people are created in God's image, and all people serve that purpose. When we've gotten our culture away from understanding the Imago Dei, we especially embracing evolution and all that, we've put ourselves in the spot. When the teacher looks at every student and realizes that they are God's creation, they are made in His image, they're here to serve the purpose that God has called them to serve, and then my job is to help them to be successful, red, yellow, black, or white, poor, rich, whatever it is. And the gospel tears down those boundaries. As a teacher, when I was in the classroom, that's exactly how I began to approach my students and my families. I looked at all of my children. They're successful. I'm successful. They're successful. And when I can help educate good men to be good fathers and good husbands and good citizens who are equipped to do what God has called them to do, then I've done my job as a teacher. Now I know that that's far out there, and educators listen to this saying, well, that's just you importing your religion into the classroom. But no, that's me putting my worldview into practice, because everybody has a worldview. I don't care who you are. You step in that classroom, you're operating from a worldview. It's Christians going into education, accepting the reality that you may not get promoted, you may not get the raise, you may not get your stuff, but you're going to put into practice your godly worldview and love these children and see them as God has made them. From a educational philosophy standpoint, That's a tough one because there's 100, there's at least 10 different philosophies that are somewhat valid. You're going to have to find. I'm a little
right. And I think there's a tie-in to what we talked about previously with the Tiger Woods situation. It is a Christian response, compassionately, to say we pray for Tiger Woods' health in this situation. Yeah. We can't, as Christians, stop by just praying for his health, because what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his soul? If his body is strong and yet his soul is impoverished because he doesn't know Christ, we've not done him any favors by not praying for his ultimate sense of salvation and understanding it. And so, too, I think in education, as we look at it, you think, and you said it, I think, adroitly, that educational philosophies abound and everybody comes with a sort of presupposition when they come to the subject of education. It would be unchristian of me or you to come to this show and begin talking about educational philosophies without understanding the basic human dignity that comes from the imago Dei, that we are created in the image of God. Like, we can't say we want X, Y, or Z to happen in educational philosophy without saying that, wait a minute, there's human dignity. Like, people should learn, people should be educated about the value of life before we say anything else. And so the compassionate response is we figure out the value of each child and each person that we have an opportunity to educate in those facilities and in those spaces, while at the same time recognizing that those educational philosophies, consequences, and ideas lead to something. If we make people successful, quote unquote, people who can earn a lot of money but are not compassionate, then we've really not done ourselves any favor. If we make people who are dependent upon the government and really not productive members of society, and yet neither of those two scenarios that I mentioned right there are people who have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and we've really not done anybody any favor. We've just projected a type of educational philosophy to get a basic outcome, which is probably, if we were to extend that discussion, Jason, you and I would both say this is a reason why our kids are not on a filler in the system of public education. But that's another discussion, probably for another day.
Look, I mean, and do it justice and head over to the Christian side, Christian schools. How many Christian schools have lost their identity as Christian because they've elevated sports above what it is, or they've taken math and science and reading and education and just kind of wrapped it in Christianity versus actually coming at it from a Christian perspective. So I would advocate that both the Christian private schools and the public school need to have teachers who actually, one, believe the gospel, and two, believe in the imago Dei, and begin to ingrain into the culture of their classroom this idea of love and respect and dignity that it comes from a teacher who is praying for all of their children and seeking to give life to their children. And life comes through the gospel, but life also comes in math and comes in reading and comes in arithmetic, comes in all those things. And so it's what we're trying to do with Team Divine here, is we're not just teaching you to read and teaching you to write. We are demonstrating the love of God to you. And we know that God created math, God created reading. I mean, goodness gracious, he sent his Bible down in written form. His word is in a written context, which means that he values reading. The whole world is run by math. He values math. So we teach it from the standpoint, I mean, look, God loves math, God loves reading, and we want you to love math and love reading because he does, and it's going to draw you closer to him knowing those things. I think that's what begins to knock down the barriers. And that's what begins to help the inequalities that we see inside the classroom to dissipate into a more equal. Equals funny. I would want to. Because I would just say, a more love and respect, dignified classroom where everyone knows when they walk in there, hey, look, I'm a valued member of this classroom because of how God made me and what I bring.
Yeah, and actually respect and value some of the ways even that we've had discussions with the larger city council related to Nashville Public Schools, Nashville Metro Public Schools, in the sense that we are giving to each child those competencies that are best going to help them to achieve it. So it's not equality, like every student has the exact same thing. Uniformity, but we do want outcomes for each student that are going to be the best outcome that they could possibly have.
That they can have.
The barriers to that.
The all things being equal thing is killing us.
Yeah. So neither of us are proponents of that. See a massive folly in that.
A great example that I just knew. I knew this guy in high school who was brilliant in math, brilliant, and he went on to work for IBM, and now he's a big wig up there because he knows computers. I was never going to be brilliant in math, ever. So if you're going to make all, that's right. If you're going to have to make all things equal, he's going to have to come down to me because I'm never getting to where he is. God just wired this man's mind to be brilliant at math. And he would tell you, I mean, look, I work at it, but for the most part, it just comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
The way singing comes naturally to you and some other things. So, I mean, I don't know, this whole equality thing, I think it's a bit of it's a killer in the classroom. We've got to be a little more discerning about even with our own kids, right? You and I study our kids to find out how has God wired them? How's God made them? One kid might go on to study in college because that's just the way he's made. And another kid might go off to trade school because he's really good with his hands. How do I make them both successful, though they're going in two different directions?
Right. So give us an up-to-date report on what happened in Illinois, because that vote was yesterday, as I understand.
I'll be honest with you. I was at a meeting. I didn't even look to see. I'm all ears, because I think the trajectory in every article that I read said, there's really not much that you can do to stop. No, you can't. I know that there was a 6-5 ruling that it passed this committees, this whatever this group is, it passed them. And then once it passes them, there's supposed to be some 40-day discussion about it. And then it goes over to for it to get into the standards. No, there isn't nothing you can do because they're all drinking the same Kool-Aid. So
breaking news here, drum roll.
That's the problem we have in Illinois is, again, we don't have the representation. We don't have any way to stop these policies. This is why we need balance in the government. We have to have it because you can't stop any radical idea that they all decide to jump on. And it's not because all of them ideally feel the same way or have convictions. It becomes more about political clout, position, power. It's not even about like, yeah, I agree with this or I like this or I want to do it. It's about what is it going to do for me? And that's what we're seeing in the politics in Illinois. And it drives us nuts because they use and manipulate the people to get there. And here we are stuck with the consequences. These are real consequences, like serious consequences. Teachers are going to lose their job. Police officers are going to lose their job. These decisions they're making are going to affect the livelihood of good people who are trying to bust their tail to make life work. And we're just making it so much harder on them.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to kind of turn the corner a little bit in this discussion, because we're at about 49 minutes now, to since this is the Way Forward show.
Yeah.
And Brenda Lee is kind of bringing us some more information here about kind of what she would think we would move forward in. You can see that comment there on the screen. But what do you think is the way forward? Like, how do we do this? How do we do this well? How do we do this as Christians better? How do we enter into the discussion, the public forum? Because I know that one of the discussions that I had, and I guess everybody will know this kind of private discussion. I'm for those of you who don't know, I'm one of the council members for the Nashville Justice Circle, and our areas of interest in Nashville, at least, that we address, are education, policing, and healthcare, to try to come up with, again, equitable outcomes for the largest number of every resident in Nashville. And we're a collaborative group, and so we work with a lot of different organizations that are doing work, because we're not trying to reduplicate, but we're trying to connect the dots and then fill in the gaps and then make Nashville stronger. And so, I've written the mission statement for that, and it's just a lot of different things. And so I'm in discussion with a lot of different groups in Nashville. And one of the side discussions that I've had, I guess it's not going to be private that much longer, is that one of the things that the educational philosophy in Nashville has offered us is innovative solutions to educational problems. And so one of the examples that they tried out is that for a lot of kids who were struggling at a particular school, I won't name the school, but they found that it was helpful when they were having in-class situations for them to have a 15-minute timeout or just some sort of thing where they could go down and they could practice meditation. And there was an instructor there that would work them through some yoga and then kind of de-escalate. And those were some innovative de-escalation techniques that were offered. And what they found is that the number of referrals and students that were in trouble was greatly reduced because they had somebody that was on site. So the discussion becomes, should every school have a yoga instructor that is there for the purpose of de-escalating what's going on there? And then, or should every teacher be equipped to do yoga? And so
Please tell me.
I'm dancing in the meeting and I'm just like, I got to turn my phone off because I'm about to lose my mind in this meeting. And I said, well, what if somebody came up with the innovative solution that we should have Christians who come in and we have a prayer meeting and a gospel presentation? You would absolutely lose your mind if I came in. You know what? I can speak to these students from the Bible and show them the error of their ways. You would absolutely go nuts, but that would be an innovative solution. So what essentially is happening is you want our help, but you don't really want our help.
That's exactly right.
And I about lost it. I about had to go into hiding. I about got myself kicked off the justice circle because I was about to go nutty that we are asked to give innovative solutions, but the innovative solutions would obviously be gospel solutions, but those are not very welcome in the public school setting. But other worldviews and philosophies and educational religions are implemented and they get celebrated in the public school. And so I'm just sitting here doing this dance of, I want to help. I really do. And I think I really know how I could help, but I don't think you like that answer.
Yeah. I think the way forward for the church, and I'm going to assume, and not to assume too much, but we feel overwhelmed in Illinois, overwhelmed, underrepresented, overwhelmed. We are not the majority culture when it comes to politics. So this deeply has to be a matter of prayer for your own sake. Like you have to have the gospel encourage your heart, because you'll become bitter and disenfranchised very quickly when you realize that it is Mount Everest every day. Okay. So the way forward, first and foremost, you have to commit for your soul's sake and for the sake of the children you serve and for the teachers you're trying to engage in, who come from all walks of life, who may or may not disagree with what's coming down, but they're feeling it too. So you have to be praying for them and for wisdom. Second of all, you have to engage the school where you can engage them. And here's how we're doing it. When COVID hit and it put people in a bind with this remote learning stuff, we found that many kids in the community were not able to get online or didn't have the structure, the support system to help them do remote learning. And so the church found an opportunity real fast to open our building, our internet, and began to engage these children in remote learning and mentoring and tutoring and different things like that. When we approached the school about it, essentially they were open to helping us because they realized that these kids are really struggling and they're kind of desperate and we want to help. And as long as we keep that connection at an arm's length distance, so to speak, our thing is our thing. And so we have been developing all year a cooperation and a relationship with the school district. It's slow going. It has its places where certain lines can't be crossed, and it's not because we don't want to be, but it's just the way the nature of everything is. And so where we can cooperate, we are eager to cooperate. And so we became part of solutions to problems they were having, like a certain group of children were not able to get to school. I mean, they're having many truancy days. We're talking months, 2 or 3 months, where the kids are not able to show up to school. And so they called us and said, hey, I know you guys run a bus. Any way you could possibly pick these kids up and bring them to school? Absolutely. We jumped on it. So every morning at 7:30, we get up and we pick these kiddos up. And on our bus, my daughter reads the Bible to them, a Bible story to them, prays over them, and we send them off to school. And at 1:30 in the afternoon, we pick them up. Some of the kids go to the program, some of the kids go home, and we get to interact with these kids, and we're a solution to the school. So it's not that we're in the schools and we're having that direct impact, but we're definitely trying to find ways we cooperate. So the church is going to have to talk about creative, innovative ways. You're going to have to find a way to engage the school, because you have to remember everybody in the community shows up at school at least once at some point in their life. And so the school is a major institution that you want to get to know and have a relationship with. And once the community realizes how much you're supporting, it makes it a lot harder for policies like this to come down the board and all of a sudden just sever that connection. Because we're loving our community and we're helping kids and we're helping them be successful. It shows them what we're for, and it shows that we're for them. And it does make it difficult for these policies to actually come to fruition here.
Well, and I want to say a little bit about that because, obviously our family got a chance to come up and celebrate with you guys during Christmas time. Do some special things for the kids, do some music for the kids. The church was in very heavily involved in that, and just really enjoyed those mornings where we could get on the school bus and interact with the kids, students, as they were getting ready to go to class. And just having seen that program firsthand and some of the things that you deal with, each of those students, precious, but very challenged in various areas, and a lot of them different challenges that you guys have had to rise to the occasion while still doing education, while still trying to help them meet various outcomes. And with COVID in place, working through the school system and then using the technology that the students were having to integrate some of those different things. I'll just say from firsthand experience, having observed what you guys are doing, just a tremendous job of interacting with the student population there as well as the administration. And I think maybe, did you ever go on the radio? Like you're more popular on Christian radio than I am. I think Caleb or somebody reached out to you and they said, "Hey,
Caleb reached out to us, and we were positive and encouraging, and
that was a human interest story of the year, that what you guys are doing up there." And so,
hey, just so you know, we're rigorous about our education. I mean, we do rote learning, we pound math, we pound reading. We are serious about the kids learning, and we let the schools know that we want them to know their sight words. We want them to be able to rattle off their add, subtract, multiply, divide. We're serious about their success there, but we're unapologetically unashamed of the gospel, and we're serious about that as well. And so they get both, and they've come to love us, and we've come to love them, and we love it. It's hard because we talk about challenges. These kids are overwhelmed with all kinds of emotions and feelings from the stuff they have to work through. And that shows up, behavior wise and different things. And we have to, and that's not just us. I mean, school's dealing with that too. That's the other thing that this thing doesn't account for, is just the tremendous stress these teachers are under. Before you can even get to math and reading, you've got to get through real anger. Right. So an example that we're dealing with at the program that has to be going on at the school too is two little boys are mad at each other. Both moms are addicted to methamphetamines. Well, one mom OD'd with the other mom. And so one boy thinks that his boy's mother killed her. And that's what they come into school with, and that's what they come to the program with. That's not, he took my toy or he called me a bad name. That is serious, heart-wrenching, deep anger.
That's deep, bro.
It is, I want you to die because you killed my mom anger. Misunderstood, worldly. I mean,
there's no number 2 pencil that we can give you for that one.
Yeah, and so when these kids get after each other and they're mad at each other, which we have to deal with, that's not a little rage, that's a lot of rage. Yeah. And these teachers are dealing with that stuff every day, And our program is dealing with that kind of stuff every day as we're trying to help them be successful in math and reading. We're trying to give them a gospel worldview that says, look, the gospel is big enough to handle this and take care of this and bring justice and mercy and dignity and all those things, which is why I think the gospel is a better solution than progressive liberalism or critical theory or even conservatism. I don't think conservatism touches what the gospel can touch.
Yeah, and I think that's encompassed a lot in what Scott's comment was there, as I was deciphering through some of that related to the church's failure and inability at times to understand race, in the sense that there's one race,
Yeah.
Adam and Eve, and then how we have failed to live out the biblical principles of loving our neighbor and loving God, and understanding ethnicity and having compassion and various other things. But there was something that actually hurt my heart, Jason, and I know time is short here. We probably got to end it here very soon, but I was in one of the meetings and heard somebody actually say, and I really couldn't really refute this, but that in former days, the church used to be the place where everybody in the community interacted. At some point, they were going to come either through Vacation Bible School, or there was going to be such a large populace of the people in a particular place that they would all have to, at some point, go through the church. Even people who would go so far as to say, at some point, even when you die, there's going to be people who assemble at a funeral.
Yeah.
But now we've kind of gotten past that place. You know, there's some people who are cremated. They do other things. Their kids spend time playing sports or involved in a variety of other things. And so they were saying that the church is no longer the bedrock of the society and the place where it's a common meeting area for everybody in society. So if you have Muslim students, they're not going to go to the church and interact with that space. If you have people from different nationalities and ethnicities, that's not automatic that they will have found themselves at church at any time or any point in their lives. And that now the school has to take the primacy in that place of importance in people's lives, because every student will have to go through Metro Public. And like you were talking about, those traumatic situations that the students face, they're not going to be going and talking to their pastors or the youth pastors about those situations, and the church is not helping with that. Then who helps with that? The school helps with that. And the school begins to implement programs, and the school begins to ask for money and says, hey, we're dealing with a variety of problems that we never used to deal with. We need money, we need resources, we need innovation, we need technology, so on and so forth. And you can see how the proliferation of public education just continues to increase because of the church's lessening and waning influence in people's lives. And what you're essentially saying, and I would wholeheartedly agree with this because I've been in your program, is that we need to figure out some kind of way to cooperate with and partner with what's going on in the school, so that the school is not solely responsible for dealing with all these different things. And we further abdicate our responsibility and say, you know what, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So just, take the kids, indoctrinate them, and have a nice day.
Yeah. You're going to have to be creative, and you're going to have to be open, and you're going to have certain hills you don't die on, and certain hills you do, and you have to really pick and choose those. And you're going to have a lot of Christ in your quiet time and in your prayer time, because between the school, the culture, and these kiddos, it's going to take it out of you, because you're dealing massively. So you're going to have to be committed, because the last thing these kids need is one more person leaving their life after they've established a little bit of trust. And the school's going to need the same thing. They need to know you're reliable. They need to know that you're not off the deep end. They need to know that you're for them and not against them. It takes a lot of discernment, but it's a good relationship. I love the relationship we have right now. It's not as crazy as people make it out to be. Those teachers and those administrators, many of them, if not all the ones I've interacted with, really want these kids to be successful. And they know life is more than just activism. They know that. We live with these kids in community, so we need to do the things that make us successful here. And right now, for this time, the school sees the church as a part of the solution, and I love it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I love that you guys are there, man. We didn't even have time to talk about country music and some of the nonsense that's going on in the country music. I was going to get my guitar out and I was going to play a couple of classics. Let her cry.
Yeah.
Rock me, mama, like the wind and the waves. Rock me, mama, like a southbound dream. I was going to do some country music this morning, but we didn't even have time to get into that Morgan Wallen situation, as well as who's your boy that just yesterday? Kane Brown.
Worship you.
We're gonna have to come back next week and to jump into some of that, along with some of the other topics.
The idolatry is insane, and people who like to think that Christianity and country music like go hand in hand, that's insane. All the critiques you got about hip hop, you can go ahead and swing those right over to country music.
Keep that energy, people. All that trash talk that you've been doing, hip hop music.
That's right.
Hip-hop culture.
Yeah.
Oh, keep that energy. Country music culture.
Yeah.
We'll get into that next week. Thank you. You have been a gracious co-host here, and you have been extremely humble. And I think that's one of the words I think that peeks through this discussion there. If we're going to cooperate, here's the way forward, people. If we're going to cooperate with what's going on in our local environment, we're going to have to be humble enough to say, you know what? We're a part of the solution. We believe that the solution and the things that we offer are unique, things that only we can offer, and be willing to go the extra mile and sometimes put up with a little bit of nonsense. Like I said, I almost pulled my hair out, but I didn't want to do that because we have a need and a greater outcome that is there. So for those of you that are watching the Way Forward show, I'm going to let Jason give us the last word here. But thank you guys for joining us. We've got a YouTube audience. We've got a Facebook audience. We've got a variety of other things that are going to be connected to your social media starting next week. And so we'll start announcing some topics and doing some promo so that you guys can join us probably around 9-10 o'clock each Saturday morning. We'll jump into it for about an hour. And like my wife said, you could do a daily show because there's so much stuff that happens each day that needs commentary, Christian commentary, that you could spend all of your time doing a daily show. And I would imagine that the next week, once we get more information about the legislation that's being passed there, adopted, and then other places hearing about it, there will be a lot more for us to talk about on the educational front, but also, race and ethnicity discussions abound, and there's some wacky things that we need to get into.
Hey, like I pray over my kids every day, not just my own personal children, but when we do Ting Divine, I pray, Lord, that they'll love you with all their mind, heart, soul, and strength, love the neighbors themselves, that they'll seek first your kingdom and its righteousness, and all things will be given to them. And I pray that they'll trust in you with all their heart, lean not on their own understanding, in all the ways acknowledge you, and you'll make their path straight. I think if we can bring that to fruition, God will answer those prayers. Man, we will see a revival. We'll see the change. We will be the change our culture needs.
Amen. Amen. That's strong, Pastor. What are you preaching on tomorrow?
Acts 17, 1-15. Pretty much, you've got missionaries have to have a noble heart for the scripture because Christ reveals himself in the scripture. Okay.
I'm doing a series called Is there anything I need to know about the end of the world? From 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. I'm doing Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 1-10. I'm trying to be creative about that, but at the same time, we're going to drill down and we're going to say Christians need to know that there's a primacy on relationship, verses 1-10 in 1 Thessalonians 1-10, and that the distinctiveness of our message is that the coming wrath of God is near and approaching us. And so we better say what we need to say and say it clearly.
Yeah. Yes. Call people to repentance. We talk about this all the time. Call people to repentance.
All right, brother. Well, I'm going to show our little snazzy. This is a little snazzy intro and outro that we have here. You guys join us next week. We'll be doing some more promo for the Way Forward. This is what you're going to get. A black guy and a white guy. We love Jesus. We love each other. And we talk about some crazy stuff. So we're going to swing from country music to hip hop to everything else around the globe and try to make it insightful and fun for you guys. Your comments are always welcome. until you start getting naughty. Don't be naughty. You'll get included in the show. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been episode 1, season 2, Way Forward.